throw me some example KPIs, key performance indicators in here. I know there are benchmarks in your head. Let's hear some of those.
What is the average order value? That's a very key one because it's going to help you determine how much you could be able to spend on acquisition right away. So average order value, lifetime value. Those are the two keys. If you've got a subscription product or a product that's replenishable and you get somebody to buy one and they continue to buy, you want to know what your lifetime value is so you can go and understand what your cost per acquisition, what your acceptable cost per acquisition is. The higher that acceptable cost per acquisition is, the better chance you're going to be able to have to kind of scale up your advertising and move to a position where you can hire a great team underneath you to support the growth of that business.
You're listening to the E-Commerce Influence Podcast with Austin Bronner and Andrew Foxwell. If you want honest, transparent, and tangible results that deliver lasting value and revenue, this is your podcast.
It's safe to say that most of us have been doing a lot more shopping online lately. And if you're an e-commerce brand, that means you might be seeing more first-time customers. Once they've made that first purchase, how do you keep them coming back? That's what Klaviyo is for. Klaviyo is the ultimate marketing platform for e-commerce brands. Klaviyo gives you the tools to build your contact list, to send memorable emails, automate those key messages, and more. A lot more. That's why more than 40,000 e-commerce brands like Chubbies, 8 Sleep, and Living Proof, including most of my clients, use Klaviyo to build a loyal following. Strong customer relationships mean more repeat sales, enthusiastic word of mouth, and less depending on expensive third-party ads. Whether you're launching a new business or taking your brand to the next level, Klaviyo can help you get growing faster. Plus, it's free to get started. Just visit klaviyo.com/influence to create your free account today. That's klaviyo.com/influence. You may know Justuno for pop-ups, but if you haven't checked them out recently, they're a full-blown conversion rate optimization platform. Yes, they've got pop-ups, but also they've got AI product recommendations, exit offers, Facebook Messenger, SMS, capture, and a lot more. Brands like Pure Vita Bracelets, Rothy's, and Movement use Justuno to capture and nurture their traffic all the way to conversion. I recommend Justuno to my clients as a top conversion rate optimization tool. Now, you can use AI cross-sells and upsells directly in-page or in-cart with Justuno Plus for higher average order value. Justuno Commerce AI takes in your product catalog and then will display smart recommendations based on visitor behavior. If you want to create a seamless experience from offsite all the way to onsite with unified messaging, you got to check out Justuno. Head over to justuno.com/influence to learn more. That's JUSTUNO.com/influence.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the E-Commerce Influence Podcast. My name is Andrew Foxwell, and it is a pleasure to be with you. Hope you're having an awesome day. And let me just say, this episode is Austin Bronner getting interviewed, my illustrious co-host, by Kurt Elster, who is the host of the Unofficial Shopify Podcast. Many of you may find extreme value in that podcast, and hopefully you enjoyed the episode where we interviewed Kurt. But let me say, the interview here, the reason we chose to share this is because it really goes into depth. And Austin gets interviewed talking about how top e-commerce brands scale up and really what the difference is between those that scale and those who don't. And Austin goes into his philosophy on growth. And it's really obviously an important time. We're talking about, Movement watches sold now to Movado for 200 million. And so it's interesting because Austin goes into defining that growth strategy, scaling the advertising, hiring that team necessary, et cetera. So this episode, I think you'll really, really like. Let me just say before we get to the episode as well, thank you for listening. And if you would, please rate us on iTunes and let us know your thoughts. You can always email us at podcast@ecommerceinfluence.com. So without further ado, here we go.
Thank you for joining me, sir.
Kurt, I'm happy to be here, man. Thanks for having me on.
How do you say your last name?
Last name is Bronner.
Bronner?
Austin Bronner, yep.
Are you sure it's not Browner?
I'm sure.
Agree to disagree.
30 years of discussion on the last name.
I'm not sure my name isn't Chris. Sometimes I'll answer the phone. When I answer the phone, I just go, Kurt speaking. And people go, hey, Chris, is Kurt there? Like, yeah, let me go get him.
The funny thing is that my name is Austin, and I actually live in Austin, Texas right now. And so pretty much every day, people are like, oh, Austin and Austin. It's very easy to remember my name.
Austin from Austin.
Exactly.
Well, you did it to yourself when you moved to Austin.
Exactly.
You knew it. You said I could move to Austin, and I should probably change my name. But you know what? I'm just going to stick with this.
It's the ultimate hack. Everyone remembers my name now. It's the easiest thing to do. Just move to the city that your name is.
That's a personal branding hack right there. I like it.
It is.
Okay, so number one, I introed and said that you've worked with these giant brands and you have helped them grow from $500,000 to $100 million. Oh my gosh, that is many zeros. How do you do that?
So that is a really good question. I think that depending on where people are in their different levels of the business, I think there's different phases of growing a business. And when I say that, I've worked with companies that have gone in that range, one advantage of being somebody who's a consultant and has worked with different companies is you get to see companies in different phases, how they actually scale up. And generally, like, I kind of break it down into about 3 different phases, right? Like the first phase is, for people who are listening, if you're like doing under $1 million or maybe under $700,000, there's a very different focus you need to have than if you're up doing $10 million or $5 million. That first phase I look at, and it's kind of like your goal should just be to find a channel that works to acquire new customers, and then become an expert in that and try to ramp that up as quickly as possible. That's really like the main focus when you're just starting out, whether it's Facebook ads, Instagram ads, YouTube, just get there and ramp it up.
So early on, find a channel that works for you and double down on it.
Double down on it. And I always say become an expert in that. Like early on in the business, like you want to figure out how to acquire customers, and you personally, if you own the business, should become that expert, because then down the road you'll be able to hire somebody and you'll be able to know that they're actually doing a good job. I always recommend that. It's like that's very, very helpful, and that takes away some of the craziness behind hiring that goes on if you do grow.
I love that idea, because I will tell new merchants, I said, yeah, please, try to set it up yourself first if you think you can. Play with it. Play with Shopify. Because even if you succeed, great. You saved yourself a bunch of money. And either way, you will have an appreciation for the work. You will be able to speak the same language as the people you hire, and you will be able to much better communicate with them. So going down that road, even if you fail at it, is still a win.
100%. You will learn so much. And, I definitely would split it up and say, I would not try to build the store yourself, right? Hire somebody to do that and hire somebody to design it, like those technical skills. But just for the acquisition channel, if you find that you're able to get some traction on Facebook or Instagram, then really learn that and try to figure out how to do it yourself. And at the same time, capture a ton of emails and start building your email list, because that's going to become super valuable for you down the road.
Always, everyone says that. Start building that list at day 0, because it will pay dividends in your business. It will be the lifeblood of your business. And when clients apply to work with us for marketing efforts, for Facebook ads, one of the things we look for is, hey, have you successfully done this before? We need to see a validated product market fit. We want to see that, hey, you've figured out, you have found the audience, you have found the right offer for them, before we jump in there and say, all right, let's work on this. Let's get this organized nicely, drive that cost per acquisition down, and make this thing scale up and profitable. So we're on the same page. What do you think what's the big difference here between, I see lots of Shopify stores, and not all are successful, but many want to be. What is the difference between the Shopify brands that scale up and the ones that don't?
Sure. Great. That's a really good question. It's always going to start with looking at market and product, right? If you have a larger market and a product that is serving a larger market that has the ability to scale up, that's going to be the first thing. And that's a really good question to ask yourself, because if you have a really niche product that can't scale up, that's okay. But don't try to scale something that's not going to be able to scale. So first and foremost, do you have a product that has a large enough market that you can scale it up? And then where I find people having success is kind of like, once you've got that channel, it's working, you're driving sales, maybe you hit around $1 million, 700,000, around that range, it changes a little bit, because what's going to happen is that acquisition channel is going to move from maybe a part-time gig into taking over pretty much the entire week. So let's say you're spending on Facebook and you're generating sales. As you get to like $1 million, what's going to happen is that's going to take over your entire day. And if you're a business owner, you need to be able to move yourself and replicate what you're doing and replace yourself in that channel. That may be with an agency or hiring another operator. And what I was saying earlier about learning that channel, it's going to be a lot easier to find somebody who's good if you know how to do it, so you can evaluate their performance. But you need to move yourself and not allow yourself. I see a lot of people get kind of stuck in this position where they scale up to a certain point and then they can no longer do the CEO role. They are stuck in the marketing role because all they're doing is Facebook ads all the time. So you got to take yourself at whatever channel you're in that's working for you, replace yourself and find somebody who can make money while you're doing other things. And then at that point, you need to kind of focus in and start locking in some of the optimization. So on the email side, you need to be really diving in and working on some of your triggered emails. The emails are going to be generating repeat sales. Do some more optimization stuff, maybe experiment with some other channels. But the key is you got to free yourself up to get more space to be able to optimize and start pulling different levers and continue to have the business grow without you being the bottleneck as the person who's doing customer acquisition.
Okay. So I see the commonality here among all of these things is focus. You need to fiercely defend your focus. And instead of saying, oh, here, we've got these 10 things, and we're going to try all of these things in a shotgun approach and see what happens. And instead, they all end up being lackluster, and you still don't know which one to pick. What you should really do is take from what I'm hearing here and from what my experience agrees with, right? We got some confirmation bias going, is that you want to find, say early on, you want to focus on a couple of key things that you suspect will work and seek to validate those ideas. And if you can validate them, then you go, all right, how do we grow this, and how do we grow it without me as the business owner being involved? You need to get, once something works and you understand it, great. You're now the best person to get that off your plate. How do I get that stuff off my plate? So if let's say I'm early in my business, I just figured out, man, I got my Instagram strategy working right. I figured out Facebook ads that are profitable. Now I want to move on to the next thing, and I want professionals to tackle this for me. How do I do it? How do I delegate it?
So that is the place where a lot of people get hung up, right? And they got to find either just for example's sake, because often I find these are the channels that generally people scale up on. Like, you got to find somebody who can do some paid social for you, and you got to go.
We're talking about traditional Facebook ads.
Yeah, Facebook ads, Instagram ads. You gotta find somebody who either is an operator or an agency, and you got to hire them over a trial period, get them working with you, and guide them to get to the level of success that you have currently been generating by yourself, and then allow them to take that much further. So as you transition over and you get somebody who can take over paid social, or maybe it's Google AdWords, maybe it's whatever your main channel is, get somebody to take that over for you. Then your role as your business owner is going to be to take a look at the fundamentals of the business and see if there's ways to improve average order value, increase lifetime value. That might be rolling out more products. One big key of the difference between companies that are able to scale up and ones that aren't you got to be able to roll out other products. If you just have a one and done type purchase, it's going to be very, very hard to scale up unless you have a very high product value, right? Because there's kind of a level of ad spend you need to be able to hit to be able to scale up. You need to have like an average order value of, you need to be able to like spend over $50 on paid social to be able to actually scale up and acquire a lot of people. So your role as a business owner.
Throw me some example KPIs, key performance indicators in here that you would use to judge. Let's say you were validating a client. You want to say, man, should we take them on? Is this business going to scale? Is this a good idea? There are certainly some metrics you would love to know to get a look at. What is I know there are benchmarks in your head. Let's hear some of those.
Very simple. First, average order value. What is the average order value, right? And that's a very key one because it's going to help you determine how much you could be able to spend on acquisition right away. So average order value, lifetime value. Those are the two keys. If you've got a subscription product or a product that's replenishable and you get somebody to buy one and they continue to buy, you want to know what your lifetime value is so you can go and understand what your cost per acquisition, what your acceptable cost per acquisition is. The higher that acceptable cost per acquisition is, the better chance you're going to be able to have to kind of scale up your advertising and move to a position where you can hire a great team underneath you to support the growth of that business. Those are some of the key things that I look at. Just looking at a little bit of conversion rate on the website, but conversion rate can be totally skewed by traffic coming from cheap sources. It's very easy if you just turn off all traffic and just put on retargeting traffic, your conversion rate's going to go up, and sometimes that can be confusing to people. So I don't put as much stake in that as average order value, lifetime value, repeat purchase rate. Those are the things that I like to look at to figure out how successful. Also, net promoter score as well. If you have the net promoter score, that's gives you a better idea of how satisfied customers are, how often they're purchasing again, and how much they're spending.
Break down for us what the net promoter score is.
Net promoter score is a really simple metric that after somebody makes a purchase, you ask a very simple question, which is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to refer this product to somebody else? And then your customer can select from 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, 1 being the lowest. And there's basically 3 buckets that people fall in. If you select 9 or 10, that would be considered a promoter, meaning somebody who will actively promote your brand to other people. I think it's 8 to 6, I believe, or 8 to 7. I can't remember exactly. It's somebody who's passive. I think it's 8 to 6 if they select either 6, 7, or 8. They're passive, meaning there's going to be no word of mouth spreading of your product, but they're also not unhappy. Below 6, they'd be considered a detractor, and they will actively go out and speak against your brand or whatever you're selling. So the key is, the higher the net promoter score, the more people who are in the promoter range, the more likely that your product is to go quote unquote viral or be spread by word of mouth, because people are satisfied with it and they're going to be sharing it offline, to their friend. They're going to be really, really excited about what you're doing, and the virality of that product was going to be higher than somebody who's got a lower net promoter score.
And what's a good tool to determine this?
There's Delighted. There's all these different tools. I like stamped.io because it's kind of an all-in-one package. You can do reviews and also ask for the net promoter score, and it will integrate with Klaviyo. So if you're using Klaviyo to send your emails, you can have triggered emails that go out to people based on their net promoter score. So if somebody's a detractor and maybe they give you a 2 out of 10, then you can have an automatic customer service email that goes out to those people, following up with them before you ask for a review to try to figure out what happened. And if they have maybe a 10 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10, you could follow up with a different email that asks them to refer their friends.
That's pretty brilliant. I love that. I'm shocked I'm not doing that now. That's a good one. Okay.
It's pretty sweet. Yeah.
I like that. So now, all right. So we have figured out you can look at your conversion rate and funnel, but it is so and you want to have a good funnel, but it is so easily affected by traffic. The number one factor that will determine conversion rate is quality of traffic, and I think that's a point people miss. So I always have to, you always have to look at that number relative to itself. Like, all right, if I look at the funnel in terms of conversion rate, purchased, added to cart, those things, the actual end numbers out of context don't mean much, but relative to each other can identify bottlenecks, and that's what I'm looking for. Whereas as far as scaling the brand goes, all right, I'm largely concerned about what does it cost to acquire a customer? What is the value of that customer? Well, we could determine that through the levers we could pull for that are average order value, repeat customer rate, customer lifetime value. And then on our product, okay, if we could target better with our ads with Facebook, then we can really dial in, and we know what that CPA, customer cost per acquisition, is on our customers with Facebook. And we know our cost of goods sold on the product, and so we know what that margin is. So if it's tough when you have slim margins. I mean, if you're selling something that is at 2x cost of goods sold, and you're like, oh yeah, we got $1 million business, that's in revenue. I mean, what are you really making? Maybe 10, 15% profit. That's rough. And you're going to be fielding a ton of customer support along the way that's just going to chunk through that profit. Versus if you have, a product that's $50 with a 4x cost of goods sold, all right, that's actually like my dream thing, right? It's not outrageous as far as profit, but it is healthy and good and gives us a wide margin, and $50 keeps it in it's on the highest end of impulse purchase. Like that really is quite a great place to be in, and especially a product that solves a pain. That's something where I go, damn, this thing will scale all day, especially if there's some kind of moat or competitive advantage around it. Just speaking from experience, and we can see that in a company like Movement, where it's what do they sell for? Like $100 for a watch? They're really they're nice, and knowing a lot about watches, I guarantee there is a healthy margin in there. And then you couple that with just like a really great brand experience, and you could see where their success at some point through vision and drive became inevitable.
Absolutely. It's that perfect price point. Also, it's tapping into a need that's already there, like a desire that's already there. People already like watches, right? And so there's a huge market. It's at a lower price point that's almost impulse purchase. They're coming in with a different angle. They got a really strong competitive advantage. And a high enough, what I mentioned earlier about the ability to spend enough to be able to scale up your advertising, that's at a high enough price point. Their average order value is high enough that they can spend enough to be able to scale it up. If your average order value is around $20 or less, under $30, it becomes difficult because Facebook AdWords are expensive, and you need to figure out very quickly how to increase lifetime value to be able to acquire customers at a profit or at break even, and then make it up on the back end.
And then to recap, going backwards, you had this brilliant idea with hiring where you said, all right, the approach to hiring, you find someone who could do the work for you, who could take it off your plate, and then you give them a time frame in which it is not for them to blow your doors off and scale and beat what you did. You give them a time frame to get up to speed, say 60 days, to figure out just to do it as well as you did. And in my head, I do, all right, if I could find someone who can do something 80% as well as me, well, then that means if they're already there, I could teach them to do it 110% better than me. And that's what I'm looking for, right? And then you build and grow together. But you're rarely going to find someone who could just jump in and do something from day one exceedingly better than you. So it is about setting those expectations.
That's so important, because when you think about how much time you've dedicated to doing this, let's say you've been on the forefront and running all the ads yourself, you're going to be really, really good at them.
Yes.
And so someone's going to come in, they're going to have to learn all this, pick up all the knowledge that you have and to transfer it. So if you can get them to exactly where you're at, and what's going to happen is you will be the biggest, at a certain point, you will be the biggest bottleneck.
Absolutely.
And so you need to, before you get to that point, and I see a lot of companies die at this point where the founder can't get past themselves as being the biggest bottleneck. So once you're that bottleneck, you got to get somebody in who, they're doing it 80% as good as you. Over a period of time, they'll ramp up. And then the nice thing is that they're going to spend all their time doing it. So they're going to take your 100% and they're going to get it to 120, 130, maybe even 2x what you're doing, because they have more time to dedicate it. And you can spend your time on higher leverage, other activities that support what they're doing.
That's brilliant.
That is the key. I think that a lot of people get stuck and they kind of languish in that range of under $5 million a year because they can't replace themselves and scale up. Initially, you're trying to replace the tasks that you're not good at. Then at a certain point, you're going to replace the tasks that you are good at. And then that's tough because it's like, it takes a lot inside to be like, oh, I'm giving up this thing that I really like doing, I'm really good at. Then the next step after that, and where I feel like the difference between the businesses that go really big and the ones that stick at around 10 million or so, are you have to be able to give up your role at a certain point. You got to hire a really quality person who'll be head of marketing, whether it's a CMO who could spend all their time in the marketing role and start really expand and you'll take out the role will then shift for you where you're bringing in quality people, and that person that you bring into the CMO role, if they're really good and solid, they'll then be able to expand the channels and allow you to scale up in different ways. So that might be through podcasts, maybe experimenting with YouTube, different things you haven't done in the past. And if they can find really quality people that they know through their network, or they hire, they see somebody who writes a really good blog and they're like, we're just going to reach out and hire that person to do our blog, or, through affiliates, whatever it is. If you can, the final phase is moving yourself out of the role of head of marketing and into a role where you're just out there acquiring good talent and bringing them into the business and selling more of the vision. And that's, I think, the big difference between the people who get stuck in the middle, the mid-range, the 7-figure range, and the ones who are able to really scale up and go 8 figures and above.
So at that highest level, you say the thing we're trying to attain here as a business owner is to be a combination biz dev, visionary, and leader, and that combo where you say, all right, I'm leading this team, I'm giving them the vision and strategy here, but I'm also, developing our talent, I'm enabling them, I'm out finding other talent, and I'm just out there talking up the brand, should be the end game where you can you're doing really the brains work, and probably in many cases you're being your own best brand ambassador, and then all of the hands work, we'll say, and a good chunk of the brains work behind the marketing, say 80%, is all being handled by a team, by someone else.
Yes. That's the step. And that is the difference between the people who will be able to really, really scale it up and the ones who get stuck.
And this is hard, isn't it?
Yes.
Why do you
Extremely
think it's
hard?
Why do you think it's so hard?
We made it seem so easy. Here.
Well,
We're
I'm already picking out the times where it took me years to figure out these mindset shift breakthroughs things you're saying that I'm identifying with, but realizing it was really tough to get there. And then stuff I haven't even done yet myself that I know that's where I got to go. But man, even looking at it sounds hard. Why is it so tough?
Sure. Well, I think big part is just hiring can be very difficult, right? It's your baby, right? It's one of those things. Sometimes you really enjoy the stuff that you're doing. Podcasting, for example, I really enjoy podcasting. I enjoy that a lot. And I don't know if the idea of taking that and getting to the next level and have somebody else doing the podcasting on my team is daunting. I don't even know if I want to do that. But the idea
that's a little different because you would take all the pieces around.
It's a little different.
The booking, scheduling, show notes, all producing, editing, notes. Someone else could do that. You're the face. You're the brand ambassador. You still got to be on there. I think that fits within your vision of this is like top dog biz dev business owner role.
Yes. But even then, I think finding, and that's something that I've been able to outsource out. And at this point, I'm there. I'm just doing the podcast, and that's basically it. I think it's being able to actually take a step back and realize that that you're not, even though you can do stuff generally, if you're a business owner, you're going to be able to get into it really quickly and probably learn it and perform really well, that you are the person who's then going to hold you back. So your ability to learn things and become, be a successful entrepreneur is also the same thing that's going to hold you back from getting to the next level. I think that's the hardest part about it is that mindset shift and feeling comfortable having your role change entirely. And this is one of the downsides, I think, of scaling for certain businesses is you might not want to scale, right? You might not want your role to change like that. You might enjoy the fact that you are the person running the Facebook ads. That might be the business that you want to run.
All right, let's unpack that.
Totally okay. Yeah.
Let's unpack that. There are two things I identify in here. Is number one, the way we have phrased this whole conversation is that this is inevitable. This is where you're going. This is what you have to do. Otherwise, you're a failure. This is not the case. It is your business. And I'm going to tell you something. Get ready to bleep it. There's profanity here because I want you to remember it. This is intentional. It is your business. Do what the fuck you want. All right? It is your business. You don't have a boss. You could do whatever you want with it. So if it doesn't feel right, if it doesn't feel like you, don't do it. If this feels like you, then yeah, go ahead. If this is what you want, do it. But all right, to your point, Austin, what are some of there's more than one way to scale, and there are downsides to scaling. I think that's where you're going with it. Throw it at me.
Well, I think that there's definitely more than one way to do it. And I think of it in different ways. I think there's companies out there, you see the companies that are so quote unquote sexy, the Casper, Warby Parker, Bonobos, all those companies that they're mostly out of New York, have raised tons of money. You see them everywhere. There's Subway ads. They're on podcast ads. You see them scaling up. That's exciting, but there's huge downsides to that. The big downside to that is they've raised a ton of money.
When we say raised, what we really mean is they have taken on debt, a huge amount of debt.
A lot of debt.
Yes, and there are people to answer to now.
There are people to answer to. It's no longer your company. It's a company owned by investors, and at you're in a position where you have to scale up if you take on that much debt. And there was a conversation. I was talking to one of my business owner friends who was at a mastermind group with some people from, I think it was one of the large mattress companies, and they were in the acquisition. They weren't tracking any of their return on ad spend because they couldn't really attribute anything. It was like, well, we have to spend this much. We're under the gun to spend this much.
Oh, God.
So they have to, because they have to grow. If they don't grow, right, there's no chance of them either IPOing or getting an acquisition. That's the only level of success that they have to achieve that, or they can't pay back investors.
All right, so unpacking this more. Number one, yes. When you look at a company that seems successful and you say to yourself, man, I wish I could be like them. I want to trade places. Guess what? You're not just trading the success. You have to trade. If you want to do that, you're going to trade everything else with it, their successes, but also their sacrifices and everything that came along with it. So before the green monster strikes, remind yourself of that. And this works in all kinds of situations. There are those downsides here. I mean, especially with that VC money, there's more than one way to scale. Because for me, scaling, we have never past the initial $15,000 loan from my parents that I paid them back for when we first started. We've never taken on debt, and that is intentional. I want, for me, my vision of a successful business, a durable business, involved patient money and did not, I don't want to take on debt or loans, and we haven't. We have stuck to that. But that is not everyone's vision. For other people, like that rocket ship ride will require aggressive debt, like VC monies, leverage debt even. And that's okay if it's what you want. You just have to go in eyes open. And we talked about this in the pre-show. How there's these big brands out there, and for me, like I really see it as like the news cycle happening where when clients apply to work with us, and they've got a new store build out or a new theme build out they're doing, there will be trends in like, these are our mentor stores, the like 2 or 3 stores that you see where you go, I wish we were more like them. And they think it happened naturally, and it didn't. These things are often the result of PR campaigns that build cargo cults around these brands. And we had touched on it. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, there's definitely brands out there that have gotten the PR has the PR has made it's made it seem that they're successful, so they become successful,
which helps get more investment.
Which helps get more investment, exactly. And then also the downside of that is it gets a lot of copycats, because they're going to be a lot of people are going to see the website and be like, oh wow, it seems like they're really killing it. Kurt, build us a store exactly like that. And then you've got kind of the trend going. I look at a company like Away Luggage. They raised a lot of money. They're out of New York. You see them everywhere on podcasts, advertising, Facebook, and it's just luggage. I actually, wasn't even a really big fan of the luggage, but the reason why they seem so successful is they've had this crazy PR organized campaign where you can't go anywhere without either an influencer writing about them with some sort of a paid link, or PR talking about how this luggage is revolutionizing the world and millennials are now, it's luggage for millennials. And so that they get a lot of traction, a lot of eyeballs on their site, and people believe that they're successful. And then that shifts the entire ecosystem of how websites are built, because they look at those like, oh, well, they're doing a great job, and so let's build like their site. And it's not usually, we don't really know how they're doing. Chances are they're not profitable. Warby Parker has been around since 2010. They're still not profitable. There's a lot of these companies that we look at, they're not profitable after 5-10 years, and that's okay.
Whereas if you were a small business, like truly like a sole proprietorship kind of thing, and you weren't profitable after 5 years, the IRS would just flat out tell you, you now file as a hobby business, because this isn't a big boy business, it's a lifestyle. But when these big companies do it, we aspire to be like them because we don't know that's what's going on.
Yes. Well, you can look it up. You go to Crunchbase, look up Casper, look up Bonobos. Bonobos had kind of an acqui-hire exit that they raised about as much. They raised, I think, 140 million, sold for like 300 million. Not a huge successful exit by any means. And the team is still in place there at Walmart. I think it's Walmart that bought him. But yeah, it's very hard to tell the level of success from the outside when all you see is the PR and you see the advertising and you hear it everywhere. You don't have any idea what the bottom line looks like for those businesses. And they're playing a different game fundamentally than an independent store owner. And that's okay.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's fine. But you have to have eyes open. And when you're not familiar with that, like, and what's fun, and I'll say that Silicon Valley VC startup style world and life cycle, it is weird. It's got like there's its own culture. Here's one, if people don't know this, I forgot the name of it, but maybe you know it, Austin. In I believe it's Palo Alto or near Palo Alto, there's like this little diner that's near a park that happens to have a ton of venture capitalist office, and that's where a lot of these big, supposedly where these big VC and acquisition deals go down, is in what's essentially a diner in Palo Alto for big money. And it's kind of cool. Like, you go there and there's, there'll always be exotic cars parked there. We have family in San Jose, so this stuff, like, it's just in the news. It is just part of their culture. What's interesting is New York used to be all, the huge ad agencies over on the other coast, and now it's this incredible e-commerce hub that's growing, where the same thing in this like VC universe is happening. And there's a lot of big e-commerce brands that are often like intrinsically linked to, partially invested by ad agencies. and they're using them as essentially like an ongoing case study, research lab / investment. The giant brands get into all kinds of weird shenanigans that us mere mortals are not always aware of.
It's very interesting. And yeah, I think that back to your question about like what's the difference between brands that scale up and ones that don't, a lot of it has to do with market, product, how much money that they've raised. Those are all questions to ask. Whether or not, whether or not they have a subscription aspect of the business, that's a big part of whether or not a business is built to scale. And yeah, just the vision of the founder. What does success look like for that founder? And
that's
are
the question
they?
To ask yourself.
That's a question to ask yourself.
You need to have your why. You need to, why am I doing this? What's my end game? What are the rules? It's your business. You write the rule book, and then you play to that rule book.
Exactly. I love listening to Dean Jackson. He's a very famous marketer, been around for a long time. I've listened to his podcast, read his books and whatnot. But he's got a great list about success, and it's called "I Know I'm Being Successful When," and it's his list, and he's got like 10 things on it. One of them is that he can wake up every day and ask, "What would I like to do today?" He says, "I can live anywhere anywhere I choose." His passive revenue exceeds his lifestyle needs. He's working on projects he's excited about and doing his best work. Those are the type of questions, like if you can ask yourself and make a list of things that you know that you're doing, that you're successful when you are doing, that is a great place to start. And just to decide and have a clear vision of what success looks like for you, or what scaling looks like for you. Is it growth so that you can take time off? Is it growth so you can grow and sell the business? There's lots of different ways to think about it, and it's exciting stuff. We're in a great time to be in e-commerce. It's a great time to grow a business online. It's a lot of fun. There's incredible opportunity, and I feel like being clear with your vision of what that opportunity and success looks like to you is so important.
Austin, I love it. That's a great spot to end it. Could not have said it better myself. Where could people go to learn more about you?
Sure. You can go to brandgrowthexperts.com. That's our website. So we help brands scale up profitably, help them do scaling advertising, hire the right people. You can get some coaching from me. That's the best place to do it. And go check it out. Or come listen to Kurt's podcast on the E-commerce Influence podcast. I'll also, he's over there as well.
I have linked the Brand Growth Experts, E-commerce Influence, and Dean Jackson, wonderful resource you suggested there. I've linked all of those in the show notes, so check it out. And Austin, thank you. This has been phenomenal.
Kurt, it's been a lot of fun. I really thank you for having me on the show, man, and have a great one. Really great to talk with you.
Hey everyone, it's Austin with a special message for you today. On September 18th, we're going to be increasing the price of membership to the Coalition. So if you've been thinking about joining my private coaching community for some time, now is the time to do it. On September 18th, we're going to increase the price. So if you join before that day, you'll be locked in at our current price and be grandfathered in for the future of your membership. That includes all current members. So if you're a member right now, your rate will not change. We're going to be increasing the price because we've been increasing the quality of membership. That means live trainings have improved, private coaching has improved, and we brought in a ton of incredible members, and we're trying to keep that group a quality elite group of entrepreneurs, of e-commerce entrepreneurs. So if you'd like to join, now's the time to do it. Head over to jointhecoalition.com. Again, that's www.jointhecoalition.com. Hope to see you inside.